I want to start today's video off with a little bit of a story, just in case this video autoplayed for anybody, because we will get into Final Fantasy XIV's 6.1 spoilers and my impression and my thoughts, especially about where I think the game could be going, where I hope the game will be going, and obviously with my history of Final Fantasy, I think that there's a lot to actually be excited about. But I want to talk about this non-spoiler story right now, right at the front of this video. Again, just to give everybody like a minute to click off if they if they don't want to get into the spoiler talk itself. But first and foremost, Final Fantasy IV was the game that I fell in love with the Final Fantasy franchise. I was an awkward kid. I probably still am. I just got a little taller, and Final Fantasy really connected with me with 4. I did not actually like Final Fantasy 1, but I was playing, I got into RPGs, especially JRPGs, with Dragon Warrior because of the Nintendo. They had a Nintendo Power kind of giveaway. You sign up for Nintendo Power, you got Dragon Warrior. But my friend BJ, his older brother, was really into that game. He introduced it to us. We played it, and then essentially we tried Final Fantasy, and we just on the NES, and I just didn't connect with it. I was definitely, like, if you think about the typical fanboy, which I'm so glad you guys know me now rather than then, because man, I was like diehard Nintendo fanboy, diehard Dragon Warriors better than Final Fantasy. But then Final Fantasy IV, aka 2, came out in the West, and I absolutely fell in love. And I realized, obviously, like, gaming and is so much bigger. Now, I've shared before, I'm dyslexic. Like, Final Fantasy was one of the games that really helped me learn to read. Really kind of helped me get over a lot of the struggle that I still have, but at least I was so passionate about learning the story and understanding it that it gave me that focus and the ability to reach out for help whenever a word was tripping me up. That's why I maybe one day we'll make a shirt, Chibobos. Like, I would act like I would read things and I would have them ingrained in me to this day, where I know it definitely frustrates some of y'all when I say something incorrectly, because that's just how my brain learned it. And so it's kind of trying to unlearn some aspects so that I can hopefully say things actually correctly. So that is ultimately the goal. But Final Fantasy IV came at a really critical time in my life. I don't feel like I had many friends. I had my friend BJ. I had friends, but it was like you're just awkward. You're growing up, and it was this interesting way to have this amazing experience. And what I mean by that is that there were so many moments in Final Fantasy IV's story that it just blew me away. I just didn't see coming. And maybe nowadays, if I went to play it, the game as an adult, some of that might seem like a particular trope to how the games get delivered and published. But at the time, as a kid, I was just like, holy smokes. And then as it evolves and as essentially truths come out, and then when you kind of learn what people's motivations are, I was blown away. And the reason I wanted to talk about that is because I wanted to talk about 6.1. So guys, if you're worried about spoilers, thanks for checking out the video. Thanks. We'll hopefully see you in another one. But this is going to shift into kind of spoiler talk. Now, granted, I think something that I've stated before, but just to state it here in case you haven't been keeping up with the wide range of content that I like to make. I've stated that I think Endwalker could have been a game that I could easily walk away from happy with my experience. I could feel like I have experienced what Final Fantasy XIV set out to accomplish, and I'm very thankful for that experience. And so 6.1, I've been very hesitant. I've been very okay, what are we going to do here, to the point where is it going to invite me back in? Is it going to keep me excited about the future of the game, or is it just another story? Is it and not that can't be good or bad, but it's just that I've been on this journey for 13 years. What are we doing here? What's this plan? What's this story? What's it setting up? And I think that they actually knocked it out of the park. Leaning into, again, that Final Fantasy IV, we've got the Archfiends, the elements, essentially. Then you have Golbez stepping into play. You've got Ashtaya, the dragon that flew into the void, which essentially then might connect to Golbez in a way, as he had a little shadow dragon back in the day. And And I think essentially when you think about all this, these things that are connected, my hope is that this isn't just like a side story. My hope is that these characters don't get resolved in 6.2 or 6.3. My hope is that this is the start of something big. The other side of it is at the end of it, you obviously see Xenos' Reaper avatar returning to the Void, returning to the 13th. And I think that's interesting. I think that's exciting to see. Now, I watched a couple other videos just to make sure that I was like, what else is everybody saying about it? I think that it was interesting that the theory being that, the Reaper is actually connecting to your soul, your sundered soul on that shard on the 13th, and that's how y'all make that bond. Whether that's true or not, it has yet to remain to be seen. But hopefully something interesting actually comes out of that. Xenos became a character within like Endwalker, and also a little bit before Endwalker. Then I'm like, all right, buddy, let's go. Like I have lost all interest in you. I don't hate you, and I don't feel bad for you, and I'm not rooting for you. Like I'm just like, you're just there, and I don't know why. Why do you still exist? And I've seen a lot of people kind of break down, like why they like him and stuff. But for me, I just couldn't connect with him as a character, and that's not wrong. That's not right. Like that's just the way it is. And so maybe they could do something interesting with that. And I think that'd be really great to see. But beyond that, with Golbez, with the Archfiends, I mean, that could be our trial series, like if essentially as we look at to 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, and the theory that, like that's the same kind of pattern that we'll go with into 7.0. The Archfiends could be a fun set of trials, but, maybe that sets up something bigger in 7.0. I just don't want them to wrap that up. So if they do the Archfiends as the trial series, I think that'd be great. I think honestly, that'd be really exciting to see because that takes us through the next year and a half, so it's not like a mini story. Like my concern is that we just kind of regulate to all these little itty bitty mini stories, and that doesn't necessarily feel good. Y'shtola is the freaking Bamf of this story here, especially when you see her face light up when she sees the the gate. I only said fissure, but it's it's a void gate. And obviously how, like we've seen kind of, this has happened like 10,000 years ago, and then 5,000 years ago they stopped working on this gate, the idea that they could expand it and step into the void. Obviously the talisman's coming back, which is really exciting to see. We're going to make sure they get enhanced so that we can step in and walk into the void itself without a pact. I think and hope we get to do something more with the 13th, because we've seen all these other side stories that have connected to the 13th. So the question ends up being like, how are we going to connect A and B together? Do you make those past side stories required? And I don't think they need to be required to actually fully understand the 13th. I think they add a lot of flavor to if we do more things on the 13th itself. And the first thing that comes to mind is that where the kind of story leaves off, if 6.2 has us stepping back onto the 13th, like maybe that's where we get our dungeon. And that would be really exciting to see, obviously, how that ultimately plays out. And what does that mean overall for the future? Do we have this war with the 13th, with, Golbez, and essentially in 4, like I think it was Zemos, and forgive me, if I'm butchering names again, who was actually truly the one in charge or in control, and having that manipulation, and then essentially having kind of this, again, return to kind of like these more, I guess, grounded stories now that, the overall, biggest crisis of despair, etc., has been thwarted. So a couple other, I guess, threads of interesting bits of story. We see Mercidia come up a lot. That's obviously where this kind of took place, with Estaya kind of flying into the Void Gate. Back in this war, answering Tiamat's call. Love anything with dragons, and that's why I really want to go to Miss Mercidia. It'll be interesting to see with whatever happens with the Estaya story, if she truly is like the shadow dragon of Golbez, or if it ends up being where we have to save her in that regards. I think that'd be really interesting to see. It should be either way. Like I'm excited. Dragons are involved. Like that's got my interest absolutely peaked. Mercidia is a phrase, it could be a destination. Obviously we're not getting a lot of New World conversation, and that's fine, because it's like, maybe that's something for the future. But if we do get the ability to travel through the to these other shards with like, hey, we've now figured this out. If Y'shtola masters this kind of as a magic, then I think that opens up a lot of different opportunities for the various expansions. So I don't know, like I personally would love to go to Meracidia before we start shard hopping, and that could then lead that knowledge, like if like obviously like the ability to shard hop, like maybe we have access to the 13th, but in order to really kind of target them based off of how they've already set up the lore with basically something that has to be calling to them from that shard, and you have these other shards that we have no kind of connection to yet. I think essentially maybe that's where it'd be kind of cool to head to Meracidia for the knowledge, then Y'shtola is able to kind of volume it up, and then also have some connection with the 13th in a way. I think it will be really exciting to see. Now, I have done the raid with the Mists of the Realm. I have yet to finish the full story, so this is going to be shifting kind of a little bit of focus there. Namely, I really enjoyed this raid. It's frustrating because I really didn't connect with the Yahora raid series, with the Nier raid series. I just didn't connect. It was so frustrating, especially coming off of the Evil East raid series, which I was like, yes, this is so good, because it felt so connected, and people have said, hey, there's a lore, it's connected, etc. But the raid themselves were on the first, like Yahora happened on the first, and here we are back on the source with the freaking 12, with the the Mists of the Realm raid series. I'm very interested. I don't know much about it, but I can say I really enjoyed the fights. It was kind of a typical trope of like, all right, we're like, oh, we're gonna take over, and like, oh, fight, and then we go fight them, and they're like, oh, good, you passed our trial, and we're not really trying to take over. But it's a mystery, and I'm really excited to see how that kind of plays out in the long run. It's really cool to see these, the 12, and actually having it feels like them taking part in it. They're not like, or at least they're not claiming to be primals, that they do exist within this realm, and how that could play out in the long run. And my hope ultimately, again, still have to finish the story after the raid. I'm really excited to see where that goes and what kind of mysteries we kind of end up solving. So maybe I'll do another video on that here for you guys in the near future. Now, I think I've talked long enough. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. This has definitely reinvigorated my excitement for Final Fantasy XIV, especially after Endwalker. I didn't want it to be like, oh, and now something even bigger than Despair. But I think what they're doing is something interesting. Now, like that has been resolved. It's kind of like all these other players have been kind of like, well, oh, kind of like you have a power vacuum. Like, well, what's going to happen? Now people can kind of feel like they can move and do things maybe they couldn't do it before. And I think that's going to be exciting to see where it goes from here. I think 6.2 is going to be absolutely a real shocker, and that's why I can't wait to see what happens with it. So anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed my thoughts. Thanks for your time today and listening. Hopefully you have a wonderful day, and hopefully I'll see you in my next series of videos. If you guys haven't seen, I've been posting my controller guides over to Ginger JRPG. Just posted my Paladin controller guide for level 90 PvE. I've been working on the PvP ones as well, and you'll start to see the PvP ones hopefully finish off this week, and then you'll see a steady stream of the PvE controller guides head out over there. So I'll tag that in the description of this video. Thanks guys for your time. Hopefully you have a wonderful day. Hopefully I see you next time, but until then, take care.